few new faces here at Noble as well. Just want to welcome you to one of our live events. We also have some events twice a month that are virtual. So folks can join in and see great speakers and learn some great information on business and leadership online as well. But we're so excited today to have a good friend of mine who I have done business with. We were just talking about this here at the beginning, doing business together for at least 20 years, or at least me doing business with him, I should say, with his business for about 20 years now. So we're excited, but typically with our events, what we like to do and what we're really going to be focusing on with Noble this year is at our live events like this that are on site here at Oasis City Church. We like to do one event where you're actually meeting an entrepreneur. You're actually meeting a business person, and you're going to hear his or her journey, okay? And that's so valuable when you actually can hear it from different leaders who've gone through different experiences and different industries and those kinds of things. And as well as having more topical, okay, learning types of events where you're learning about marketing or you're learning about, developing websites or, how to make sure that your accounting is in place, just all those kind of business basics. We're excited to be able to have these kind of events more frequently than we've done in the last year. So, but before we get started, I'd love to have Rob Kopp come up and do an opening prayer.
Yeah. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Hey. So, hey, Steve, we're so excited to have Steve here today, and no pressure at all. We love you, man. I mean, this absolutely should be a walk in the park. So this morning while I was praying about the meeting, I had this word that just kept percolating in me. So everybody online, everybody here, everybody present, even in the future. So there's two scriptures, 1 Corinthians 16:5-9. The Apostle Paul talks about a huge door of opportunity for good work has opened up here. I'm not going to read the whole scripture. So I'm focusing, what's the word I just focused on? Has anyone got it yet? Opportunity, yes. And so then in Colossians 4:5-6, it says this, hey, make the most of every opportunity. So this is what I have this morning. I feel like we got a room and an audience today filled with people that are on the verge of, we're opportunity people. We are filled with opportunity. And I don't, there's bad opportunity, right? And there's really good opportunity. And I even prayed about that. And I felt like the Lord said that this is amazing opportunity. These are people that are filled with opportunity. I'd like that to soak in just for a second, that word, opportunity, that God's given you an opportunity today to do good things. I don't know if it's just playing with my grandson today, or if it's, some business thing, or, it could be the least little, maybe it's, making a sandwich for my wife for lunch or something of that nature. But opportunity could be great big, or it could even seem like something really small that's gigantic, okay? So I want to pray that over us today, and as Steve comes up and as he begins to share today, I just throw that word out on your refrigerator today, that we are people of opportunity. We're going to use it for good work for the Lord. So thank you, God, for this day you've given us. We're so grateful to be here. We're so grateful for the opportunities that you've given us to even know each other. And for me to even meet Chaz some years ago, this opportunity has continued to grow and grow and grow. And everybody online and everyone here, God, we're just laying that word out before you today, that we would just absolutely be soaked with opportunity today for you. We pray for Steve today, God, that you would absolutely bless him, that you would bless his businesses, that you would bless his family tree, that you would bless everything that he represents and the opportunities that you've given him, even as he shares his testimony about you today and guides and directs us. I pray, Lord, that you would just saturate us with your presence in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you. Well, I'm going to lead, first thing today, I'm going to lead with Honda makes the cars, Lindsay makes the difference. All right? Have we all heard that? Have we all heard that? Well, welcome, Steve Lindsay. Yeah. Welcome, Steve Lindsay here today. Excited to have you. We were just talking, and I had the pleasure of working for a company for 18 years. Rob and I actually worked for same company for I worked there for 18 years. Rob, what were you, about 30 or something? Yeah, it'll be 100 years.
He's 100. So Rob was here for 100. I was here for only 18. So I was a lowly guy, I guess. But you know, Steve and I were just talking. It's like, when did I buy my first car from Lindsay? And I remember I was blessed, and Rob was blessed too. We work for a company where we have company cars.
Yeah.
What's better than a company car, right? And so I had company cars, and I think the last company car that I got was from Steve and the Acura dealership. So they have an Acura dealership and a Honda dealership. And then I think since then, I went out on my own businesses and things like that. I think my family, between me, my wife, and my two daughters, we probably leased, I don't know, probably close to 15 cars between his Honda dealership and the Acura dealership over time. And you know what? There's just no better place in Central Ohio than the Lindsay Auto Group and what they do. And now, as some of you might have read in his bio before you came, they're in the Buick GMC business as well with another dealership. So it's exciting for just to see how that family has grown and developed over time. But welcome, Steve. And we really appreciate you being here today. And you're just such a man of wisdom, and you're doing just such great things in the community as well, besides just your example of business. But start off, tell us a little bit about your family. Just tell us about your family.
I want to cue off of Rob's point before we do that. And one of my favorite quotes is, when preparation meets opportunity, success is inevitable. And that's a Zig Ziglar quote. And it's so true. And really, that's what you guys are here today doing, is preparing for those opportunities that are going to come. So I want to hats off to you for what you're doing and everything. And I'm glad to be here. So question. So tell us about my family. For those of you that aren't familiar with our business, my father started this in 1973. So I'm a second generation. Last year was our 50th year of being in business. And when you think about the franchise model, really what he was able to start with and how franchise works, you're leveraging all of the connections, all of the product, everything that the franchisor, right, Honda, provides for you. So it's a great model. It's really how you see a lot of sandwich shops, cleaning company. I mean, a lot of, and all of car dealerships are a franchise model. But my dad started that in 73 with Honda motorcycles. So that was in Bexley, and we're all getting old. Everybody used to know where Honda East motorcycle dealership was, but now nobody knows where it was unless you're a motorcycle guy. And then what's interesting about that is my dad wasn't really a Christian. He hadn't given his life to Christ. He was sensitive to it. He was a good guy, but he wasn't all in. And it wasn't until he met my mom that he really grew in his relationship with Christ. And so with that, God just started to bless the business. And Honda is obviously a staple in Central Ohio. We're one of the farthest dealerships from the factory, but we're also the largest, which is kind of cool because a lot of people assume, all of the employees are getting their cars or there's special discounts for the community, whatever. And really, what's cool about it is we've seen just God's favor pour out. And I think it's one of the principles, that's what I love about what you guys are learning, because there's only so much that you can do on your own accord. And it's that level of faith and that level of favor and just putting your trust and hope and being in the vine that I think really, at the end of the day, is all that matters. So dad started the business. I grew up in the business, grew up in the motorcycle business, grew up in the car business. I started selling Acuras. So dad bought that store in '88. The joke was that Acura made him a millionaire. And he's like, wow, how did Acura make him a millionaire? Because he used to be a multimillionaire. He lost a lot of money. He lost a lot of money in the early days. And when you look at the Acura product lineup, it's awesome product today. But they were the first first Japanese manufacturer to get in the luxury car business. And you got to remember, Japanese cars today are well respected, but long ago they were considered Japanese junk and rice burners and all of this. And so for them to say they wanted to get a luxury business was like, who are these guys? Of course, we know what Lexus did. and we saw what Lexus did, and it was amazing to see them prove how well you could build a car. But there was a lot of struggles inside of that. And it was one of those things that I was given an opportunity to come into the Acura business and really cut my teeth. And it was a hard business because if you saw a customer, and people didn't know what Acuras were, they didn't even know how to say it. Was it an Acura? Was it an Acura? Who makes this? What's it called? They knew the products. They knew Legend. They knew Integra, but they didn't know what Acura was. So a lot of just trying to educate and tell people about the product. And then, of course, understanding that people buy from people and people buy from people that they like. And so really polishing our salesmanship and how we've developed. So that's how I cut my teeth in the business. I've got an older brother that's in the business. He runs our fixed ops portion, which is our service and parts. I run all the day-to-day. My dad's still somewhat involved with business, kind of at a higher, more chairmanship level. You know, I mean, he's been doing this since he was 25 years old, so it's in his blood. He doesn't know anything else, and that's okay. And I like to make provision and make sure that he's successful in the role that he's in. And then I've got a sister who's 4 years older than me. So my brother's 8 years older than me. I've got a sister who's 4 years older than me, and then I'm the baby. So, but she runs our community foundation called T.U.R.N, which I'll talk about that here in a little bit. I've been married. This is crazy. You know you're getting old when you say stuff like this, but I've been married for over 20 years. My wife's from Western New York. We were just talking about that. We met in college. And we have 3 kids. My oldest is 16 now, 14, and then so 2 boys and then a daughter who's 11. So life's very busy. It's good though, and very blessed and very thankful and appreciative of everything, and just seeing the hand of God over my life and over my family's life. Awesome. So.
That's awesome. Tell us about little Steve, before maybe you got involved with the dealership or while you were involved with the motorcycle.
So I've always been
an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
what else did you do?
Always been an entrepreneur.
Okay.
I love hustling and I love figuring out how to make money. I don't care if it was us. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think the world and I think greed and some of these other things, they get the best of that, and people don't like to draw that line. But when there was an opportunity that I could seize on, I mean, snow days for me as a kid, all the kids were looking at how they can get out of school. I've got my snow shovel out there, and I'm knocking on doors, and it was $20 a driveway. And I'll tell you, that's $20.
That's
Yeah, it was. Well, you know, you're shoveling a driveway, man. It's not burning your weak heart. But you know, I knew there was going to be a guy who didn't want to throw on his back or whatever. Save that money up. I'd buy a snowblower out of the classified section. You know, you learn how to start with a snow shovel that was free. It was in the garage, and you're just using your back and muscles. And then you make $100, and then you go buy a snowblower. And now you can do 5 times as many driveways. And then you know, buying a little tractor. And then I mean, that's just how business works. It's really not much beyond just continuing to pour in and so. I used to shine shoes at the dealerships. That was always a home run for me. I grew up in Christian schools, and Christian schools are not known for being well funded. As a matter of fact, a lot of back in the 80s when I was a kid, I graduated in '98, so that gives you kind of perspective on my age. But growing up in the 80s, like air conditioning, no stalls in the doors. You were lucky if the water worked half the time. I mean, it was just, but it built a lot of character in you. But the way you got these schools to operate was by selling stuff. Like that's how these Christian schools operate. So I mean, it was coupon books, candies, candles, meat sausages, Coke. So Coca-Cola, cases of Coca-Cola, but it was all just in this jewelry. I mean, I think back of all the things these teachers or these principals had us hustling, and it was good. I could still remember this one kid. He was in a league of his own every year. So you get these coupon books, and on the back were all the prizes. So I don't know if everybody remembers this. And they have a picture of all the prizes, and there was always like the the little prizes, which would be like a soccer ball, you know, and you had to sell like 1,000 coupon books just to get a soccer ball. But in the middle of it was a 10 speed. It was a 10 speed.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, man, who's gonna get the 10 speed? And this kid. And I remember one time he actually hit the 10 speed number, which was like something insane, like 25,000. I don't know. It was up there. And I remember the principal came in and he said, John, we're not going to get you. We decided, because this kid was, I mean, 6th grade, he couldn't even ride a 10 speed. So we're going to get you the 10 speed, we get you the D next time. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, oh, he got gypped. Everybody wanted a 10 speed. Yeah, always been a hustler, always been into figuring out how to make money. In college, I was buying and selling cars. That's what I knew. I knew mechanics. I always worked on. So even though our family was, they weren't wildly financially successful, but my parents understood that we needed to learn and understand how to work. And so there wasn't really all of these handouts. I mean, we had a roof over our head. We had Christian education. We had food on the table. We lived in a nice house. But if you wanted that motorcycle or you wanted that, you know, BMX bike or whatever, I mean, you were going to have to work for it and figure out how to make the money for it. And so, not that you're driven by things, but I think it's a good thing for kids to understand because that's kind of the language that they speak. And if everything's just given to them, then what do they expect? You know what I'm saying? So at a very early age, all of our siblings, we learned, like, if you wanted something, you got to go out and get it. And so for me, I loved motorcycles. I loved dirt bikes, and I still love dirt bikes. And so I had my eye on a dirt bike. Well, I learned a couple things through that process, talking about hustling, seeking it out. So where do you find a used dirt bike? In the classified section, and then the negotiation process, buying it for less than what it's actually selling for. And what I did with that process was I would buy something, fix it up, resell it for more money, and then build up, and then I get the bike that I really wanted. You learn a lot through that: patience, negotiation, a little bit of skills and mechanical aspects of things. And then of course you're having a lot of fun doing something. So being a business owner, being an entrepreneur, it doesn't have to be a grind, right? A lot of you can have a lot of fun doing this. It's just, you know, understanding that you want to keep it fun. Is it fun every day? Absolutely not. And you're going to have seasons where it is a grind, but you got to be able to go through that. Well, you know, learning some of this stuff at a young age, learning how to hustle, learning how to create money. When I would go shine these shoes at these dealerships, and it wasn't just our dealership, I'd go to the whole strip. I'd come home at 10 years old with $75 cash in my pocket. My fear for my kids today is that they won't understand the value of a dollar because we don't spend cash. But there's something when you walk away, you got $75 cash that you created with your time and your efforts and your salesmanship. And so being able to understand and recognize that you're creating something with what you're doing. You're creating wealth, you're creating income, you're creating jobs. And then having an appreciation for that, never taking lightly these small days, these small beginnings, because I think, you know, there is those days of discouragement where you're like, why am I doing this? And all of that. And it's like, no, there's often times I'll go back and I think through one of the first cars that I sold when I was buying and selling cars. And it's like, that was a line of the sand that I think God used to help show me that, yes, Steve, I got you. And it's important, I think, sometimes to go back and reflect on those things. And that's biblical, right? You know, the Bible would have these monuments and they would name these places as a reminder of what they needed to be appreciative of how God moved in their life, because we've got to have some of that stuff to look back on, those successes, so that we can focus on those future successes that we may be incurring. So yeah, that's a little bit about me as a young man.
No, that's good. That's good. How about your kids? Are they? I know one of them's entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
I met him in the last year. He was coming up trying to sell me one of those QR code business cards.
Okay. Yeah. That's
so
right.
he was coming up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. All right.
Yeah,
So
so-
little Steve, right?
Right, yeah. So, you know, I do think there is an element where it does kind of go through the blood. You know, I've always encouraged certain things, and the entrepreneur aspect in business is definitely something that both my boys lean towards. I don't want them to get caught up in the materialism and the negative downside of it. And that's easy to do, right? Because our flesh, especially as young people, we don't necessarily have the maturity. So I don't try to overemphasize it. I want to support it. So one of the simple things that we did, talking about, my concern about how they might not be appreciative of the value of the dollar, I was trying to think through something that could be something I don't have to maybe manage or babysit myself, but it's something that they could be a part of and do. And what I found was bubblegum machines. And so these kids, have these little bubblegum machines that they had to buy, and they're not that expensive. I mean, maybe 75 or $100 each. And then one quarter at a time, they're making their money off this. Well, now they get these bags of quarters that they have to count out and roll. And now they can kind of conceptualize and understand, because it's amazing how many kids don't spend cash today. My son's had a step card, which is some kind of a kid's debit card that he figured out on himself since he's 12 years old. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's cool and it's convenient and it's kind of the world we have to be able to navigate in. But I don't think he really understands what $23 looks like if that's the world he lives in. And any debt program, they tell you, get rid of the credit cards and spend cash. Why? Because you got to know what it's like to spend that cash. And I think it's the same thing for our kids. There's just something about cash and people that don't like this country have never been outside this country. And I would say that, and I'll never forget, I was in a very developed country. I was in New Zealand, and this girl was just working her tail off. And when you travel, you bring bigger bills because you don't want to deal with all the cash, and you'll exchange it for. And I just happened to have a Benjamin, right? A large $100 bill. And it was eye-opening for me because this girl was just working, and I handed her, and it was at a nicer establishment. So I just kind of assumed maybe that was something, I don't know. I just didn't have any other cash, and I believe in tipping and being generous. So I gave her this $100 bill, and this girl about fell over. I mean, it was eye-opening to me because I never realized how much global international wealth strength that we have as Americans till I whipped out that $100 bill. And this woman was just floored. She's like, I've never seen one of these in real life. Now she's seen it in movies. She's seen it in she's heard about it in media and stuff, but for her to actually have a $100 bill was just a big deal for her. And this is in a developed country. And it was good for me to see that because, again, I just think that we hold, even though we maybe not be at the upper echelons of American culture or American wealth in ourselves, when you look at yourself on a global scale, you are extremely wealthy, and you never want to discount the wealth that we have. And again, I say this, Jesus said, right, faith the size of a mustard seed. Never lose sight of the day of small beginnings. Don't sell yourself short, because that's what the enemy wants to try to tell you. You're nobody. That idea is not going to go anywhere. What are you doing? Blah, 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 blah. And that's just this, right? The reason you're in here is to be encouraged because God's called you to something, and iron sharpens iron. And that's part of why we're all here today. I'm here to help sharpen you. You guys are here to help sharpen me, Chad, Rob, everybody that's involved, Susan. Everybody's here to help each other, but part of helping each other is not necessarily getting together and drinking coffee. And, part of it's just being in this group and being around people that are, okay, well, who's going to hate on it? Who's going to hate on it? Why are you going to that thing? Why, shouldn't you be doing this? Shouldn't you, and that's just people hating on what your goal is. But I take it a step further. I say, realize that in the global world of things, we're a fraction of what the actual world is. We're a very small, and my world is about this big, right? I try to open it up and get it this big, but the world is ginormous. And yet so much of what we focus is just on this little tiny world that we live in. And you have an experience where somebody sees what we have readily access to, a $100 bill, and it floors them. To me, it's just an eye-opening gauge of how much we have to be appreciative of and how much responsibility that we have, especially as kingdom-minded people, to engage and take kingdom territory in this entrepreneurial and business arena.
That's good. That's good. Tell us a little bit. How did you come to your faith? How did you realize that you needed to see the
Yeah.
kingdom of God? Was that again a family thing, or was it
Yeah, I mean,
friend,
yeah,
pastor, what kind of pulled you in?
huge advantage, right? Being raised in a Christian home. Okay, now my parents are not perfect. They were both heathens. My dad was an alcoholic for a long time. You know, broken homes, broken marriages. Found God, but still have to deal with broken humanity, right? We're all broken. Okay, we all have our own things that we got to deal with. But being raised in a Christian home or around Christian pastors, Christian people, huge advantage that I'm very appreciative of. So gave my life to Christ at a very young age, 10 years old. I still remember today. But you know, at 10 years old, do you have the maturity to really understand all of this, to really understand a commitment to Christ, to really understand abiding and living in the vine? And the answer is no. Okay. So, you know, do you backtrack and then re-engage as a Christian at 12 and then, you know, at 14 and then at 18? Yeah, I mean, you have that journey. But I think, you know, more importantly, even in the season that I'm in now, you know, I'm in a season of giving up things to become closer and closer to Christ, because I don't know that you ever get it. I don't know that you ever achieve self-actualization. Or do you get your salvation? Absolutely. Okay, don't misunderstand me. I'm not going to get on some kind of theology. I believe that when you give your life to Christ, you now have a relationship and you have a covenant. But I believe that there's growth, obviously, inside of that. And I believe that there's things like abiding in the vine that are critically important so that you bear fruit. You know, we know a lot of Christians and they're good people and you know they're going to heaven, but you don't necessarily see much fruit. Part of that's just because they're not abiding in the vine. And they're letting the things of the world and all of that stuff start to get to them. So, you know, look, we all have our seasons, and that's the beautiful thing about being a Christian. There's grace. Now, grace is not a license to act like a fool, but there is grace. I mean, this is what I love about the story of the prodigal son. Prodigal son is a wonderful story, but what I love, my favorite part about it is probably what most people's favorite part is when the father saw the son, he ran to him, right? That's Christ. That's a relationship we have. So there's appreciation in that we have to operate in, and I think that's just comes with maturity. But yeah, I've been a Christian, good youth pastors, good Christian friends, good people that you're around, fellowship of Christian athletes. You are who you're going to attract people who you are. It almost sounds a little maybe new age-ish or whatever, but I've just seen this over and over, and I probably should find scripture that validates this, but I've just seen where you whatever you're ready for is what you're going to receive. And that's a success principle I think is very foundational for people to understand. What you're ready for is what you're going to receive. And I think for Christians and for successful people hang out with successful people. They attract successful people. Successful people are naturally drawn to other successful people. So if you don't like where you're at, you might want to look at your friends, because if your friends aren't going anywhere, you know, that's probably why you're not happy where you're at. And it doesn't mean you don't try to reach out, but there might be some relationships that you just have to kind of steer clear of. And I'm a nice guy. I love people, but I do have to be careful about how I spend the most valuable commodity that I have, which is my time. And not, I don't want you to think I'm out there, you know, always learning something or always, you know, but I do think that when you understand how you can get sucked in, it's like the crab theory. You guys know what the crab theory is, right? You don't have to put a lid on a bucket of crabs because the other crabs will just pull the other one down anytime they try to get out. It's that way with people that are in life. And, you know, the worst part of it is a lot of those people that are very close to you. It could be your spouse, could be a parent, it could be, I'm not suggesting you get rid of your spouse, but you have a responsibility to show these people around you the way. Now, Do you want to be around people like that or in this group? That's why you're all in here. That's why I can speak so frankly about this, because you all are here because you want to get better and you're going to see the fruit of it. But you also got to look at your own personal network. And there may be some relationships that you just got to shake because they might be dragging you down. And it may not even be a friendly relationship. There could be media relationships. There could be social media relationships. There could be news feeds that you need to say no to because all they do is bring you down. And if you just feed on this stuff all the time, and I'm not suggesting you stick your head in the sand, but if you just feed on this stuff all the time, and that's really what you consume, then it starts to become garbage in and garbage out. And that's why reading that Bible is the most powerful thing. There's 31 chapters in Proverbs. I mean, you want a reading plan and you're in business? Okay, what's today, the 27th? Read Proverbs 27. You know what I'm saying? Because you will find more truth, more relevancy, more to everything, and your answers are right there. They're right there. But you know what we gotta do? We gotta open it up. And then we gotta read it. And then we gotta consume it and write it and digest it. So, you know, it's not hard, but it does take personal self-discipline. And it does take saying no to some things in your life.
Well, I love that you brought up Proverbs and making that a daily part of your life, and 31 chapters is perfect. And on the days when the months you have 28 and 31, right? You just get a little extra. But tell us about, and I hate to put you on the spot here because I actually did. You know, we prep. You know, whenever you get a good speaker, you prep them, right? This isn't a question that I put on my list. I'm sorry about this, but you know, how do you share your faith? How do you open up with others? And that's a tough one, right? I mean, you know, you're talking to somebody, you're building a relationship. When do you engage? When do you engage God in that relationship? How have you done that, and how's that developed over time?
So the Bible says to be shrewd as a serpent, gentle as a dove, right? Okay, that's what the Bible says. Well, I love the shrewd as a serpent. I'm in business, guys. You know, it's like it's the gentle as a dove that you have to be mindful of. So, you know, there's hard conversations that you have. You're in the people business. You're around people. You're dealing with people, and people can be hard. And you've got your worldview, your lens that you're looking through. And then you have their lens and their worldview that they're looking through. And somehow we've got to meet in the middle. And there's rules of engagement that you can learn to soften all of that stuff. But there's sometimes where you just aren't going to get along. And, you know, you're talking about firing people. You're talking about writing people up for maybe things that are very close to them, that they identify with, that don't align with how you do things. You're talking about people that weren't raised the way you were. They don't have the same tools in the tool chest that you do. You know, Ohio's an at-will state. That means we can terminate our business relationship as an employee for any reason. I don't even have to give you a reason. So you think about it, here you are a Christian, and you've got to navigate. This is the real world, guys.
That's right.
I'm not here to sugarcoat it. So how do you, well, you know, you'll operate in grace. You know, I had a situation just last week where a guy, he crossed the line, just crossed the line. And you're saying, you believe in this guy, you want him to win. You know, he just had a brain fart. And it's like, that's where I think part of that Holy Spirit starts to, you know, where do I lean? Because again, lean not on your own understanding, but on your ways, acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. Well, Jesus gave us the Holy Spirit, okay, for those of us that are Christian. He gave us the Holy Spirit, okay. Well, do you heed to that? Are you building a relationship where you understand and are going to respond to that? Because that's ultimate wisdom. How do you, so you navigate through things where there are tough decisions. And there's something I learned a couple of weeks ago, and I think this is a lot of truth, because I had a Terminator employee that I really liked, and I felt that it was us letting, it just wasn't a good relationship. It wasn't going bad for any reason. It just, I didn't think he was the right guy for what we needed, but he's probably the right guy for somebody else, and it just wasn't happening with us. And what anything he really did wrong, it just wasn't a good fit. And so that's kind of at the end of the day why we had to terminate. Not like he cussed out somebody or, blew his lid or whatever. It was just kind of like, you know what, it's just not working. I hate those.
Couldn't sell? Is that it?
Could be something like
Okay.
that. Yeah, a little bit higher.
That's a tough one.
A
That's
little bit higher
all right,
level.
all right.
Yeah, a little bit higher level. But so you deal with that, and then it's kind of like, you know what? Yeah, there's grace in truth. There's grace in speak, because I was not living in truth. I was not living in the truth. I was just letting it be because he was a nice person and I didn't want to deal with it. And that's not living in truth. And there's grace in communicating the truth to somebody. Maybe they're living in sin. Maybe they're just not selling because, the breath stinks really bad. I don't know, but there's grace. I mean, these are the hard conversations. Sometimes it's like, how do you deal with this? But there's grace in truth. And I think just having and understanding that and being truthful, but being truthful in love, right? Not letting our flesh, right? So that's easy to happen, especially when you've got all the things that you're dealing with in a business. But how do you share that your faith? I believe that so inside of work, I never want people to feel like they've got a Christian to work for me. I don't think that that's right. I don't necessarily agree with all the laws around that, but I respect it, and I never want people. Now, am I very vocal about my faith? Are we vocal as a company and as a headship, praying before we do events? Or many of you probably heard our Christmas commercials that we run. But I don't want people to think, and I certainly don't want to ever misrepresent Christ in any way, because I've seen those businesses too. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh man, he got fish on the business card. I don't know about that one. And then we've been through that season, and then because there's a lot of guys that, they just put it on there, put it out there, and then it was like their license to cheat and steal. The other thing we have to understand is people are going to talk. The higher you've climbed, the more people see your Bible. Yeah, there's actually.
I heard that one before. That's good.
There's two other.
As long as he's getting bigger, I don't know what.
I'm sure you can fill in the blank. The higher you climb, the more people see your Bible. They're looking at your mindset. They're not looking at where you're going. They're not looking at your mindset. They're just looking at, So when you raise your profile as a Christian business, the more people are going to start to say, oh, well, they don't do this, or I heard this about them. You know what? I know our heart, and I'm not going to ever not say what the truth is because one mistake that I might have made 3 years ago. Does that make sense? Because that's the enemy just trying to condemn you. But we live in grace, and God's given us grace. But he wants us to take territory. And so, yes, we are very vocal about the gospel. I don't think you cannot be vocal about the gospel, but you can also be vocal in your work and how you carry yourself and all of that stuff. It's not just about communicating it verbally and helping people understand the message of Christ. It's another thing to live it out. I heard a good pastor friend of mine say this years ago. I said, folks, I'm anointed to preach it, but I'm not anointed to live it out. He still has to live out this calling, but everybody sees the man on stage and thinks, oh gosh, this guy must just be the super Christian. No, he's off stage. It's man time. It's reality. And I think that's where, for you all, God's going to anoint and bless you in different areas, but we all know one thing's true. We've got to share the gospel. That's just a non-negotiable. If you're a Christian, you got to share the gospel. The cute little song, hide under a bushel. No, I'm gonna let you. That's actually a scripture.
Yeah.
That's actually in the Bible. Jesus said, don't hide it under a bushel. So we can't. And we've got to. And there's ways that you can do that. You know what? God will show you. The more you do it, the more, the better you're going to be. But you're going to feel like an idiot. Probably most of the time. Sharing the gospel. At least early on. Until you build that. But that's just anything else. That's selling, that's cold calling, that's speaking, that's anything, you're gonna have that season, and then you just develop those muscles and you get after it. So.
No, that's great. That's great. Steve, 99% of people.
Oh, and we have a chaplain.
Oh, you have it.
So I'm gonna tell you, as you get in your goals, as you get, and you have big goals for yourself, the chaplain's been an awesome thing because Charlie Davis is our chaplain. And it's a neutral thing. He's on our payroll. And we just let people know, hey, listen, he's here. If you need anything, you can call him, and that's it. We're not gonna walk around and witness to everybody and everything else, but it's a tool. So I think it's a very poignant thing for some of you guys that are out there. Set the goal to have a chaplain because it's an easy way for people to get ministered to at their own discretion, at their own willingness, and really get in and dig in with some of those things that just need ministering. So.
Wow. So how do you, I mean, is he around all the time or is he on call?
He's on
call.
So he stops in, he'll wander around,
Okay.
you know, maybe 1 or 2 days a week. He's not full time. I mean, but he's on call. And then everybody had, you know, the managers or whatever have business cards. And then it's just kind of like, you know, hey, we'll strike up a conversation and it's cool. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I love that.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah. Been a home run.
Yeah. How long has he been involved?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
How many people, I mean, you know, obviously, a lot of those conversations are private. You may never even hear about.
No, and we don't. We make it clear. Like we don't want to know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So 99% of the people in this world don't know, have ever thought about what their purpose is, what
Yeah.
their God-given purpose
Yeah.
is. You've got a job. Your job is your business.
Right.
Okay. You've got a family. You've got community. You've got these kind of things. Have you dived into what your purpose is? What God, I mean, most of the time it has nothing to do with your job. It has nothing to do with your business. It has nothing to do with, you know what your purpose is, and would you share?
I would say that I know that I have. I know that I know what 2 of my purposes are because God pretty much had to hit me upside the head. Well, I don't think you have one single purpose. Like as a Christian, I know I'm supposed to be sharing the gospel, right? Like we all know that this purpose. As a father, I know that I'm supposed to be the head of my household and raise good godly kids and be an example to them and through the marriage and headship of my household. In business, you know, obviously it's to lead and to help others be successful and to have a, you know, successful business. But there's a couple areas that God has called me. One was insurance, and I've never had this kind of encounter before, and I haven't had one since, but God very clearly told me to get into the insurance business. It was like a 4 o'clock in the morning, wake up, somebody's talking type thing. And I'm like, I've heard about this, but it was like, and it happened to me twice. Really cool, awesome thing. And if you've ever had that or have not had that, don't be discouraged if you haven't had it. Because 99.99999% of my purposes and things I do, I've never had that, but I do know that God called me to that arena for some specific reason. And then the other one was God will give you the desires of your heart. And I went through this group, Prime Movers, which is a Chip Ingram group. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Prime Movers, but Chip Ingram, great teacher. He's actually from Columbus. Yeah. Good group. But they have this whole thing where you go through these and help you identify your purpose. And one of the things that I've been drawn to, so our community and where we're at is a very diverse area. It's I mean, household income's lower, home ownership's lower, racial, it's very diverse racially. Not tons of business growth in the area. Schools are not necessarily doing so well. Families aren't doing so well. A lot of things. And yet I see a lot of these young men who just predominantly have to be African American in our area. And I would see these guys kind of just walking up and down the street. Now, to give you a little bit of color here, I don't, I grew up in Columbus. I grew up in a more diverse than probably what people would think. So I'm very comfortable in an urban setting. But when I would look and I would see like all of these beautiful sidewalks going on all these suburbs, I just scratch my head because I wouldn't see anybody on these sidewalks. And these aren't just like little sidewalks. These are like bike paths, because bike paths are the thing that we're all going to do to get outside and get healthier. And, I know how much these bike paths cost. I mean, they're no cheap date. I mean, millions and millions of dollars are being spent on these bike paths. And then I come to my community and we have, and I learned this from our legislators and people in the county, we have goat paths. And goat paths are what you think a goat path would be. Do you know what a goat path is? It's grass that's worn out. And it's dirt and mud from where people walk. And I look at this, now, again, don't misunderstand me. I'm not one of these that, everything's getting robbed from this community and given to this community. I think that's a slippery slope sometimes people get themselves into, because I don't want to address a victim mindset. But when you see things that happen like that, and then you're like, man, why are there sidewalks this big that nobody's using there? And then there's goat paths here where people are physically walking on this stuff.
Walking to work.
Yeah. Well, they're
Walking
just walking. And that's kind of where some of my purposes come in and say, okay, well, why don't they have that living wage job? Well, let's get real here, guys. Why don't they have that living wage job? Because they don't have that living wage mentality or training. You see, if your exit strategy is to become a music star or a basketball star or a professional athlete or a manager at a fast food restaurant, and that's the only career path, or a drug dealer, that's the only career path you have, or that's the only career path that you've been shown, then I'm looking at myself and I'm saying, we got to change the narrative here. We've got to try to open up, because people just don't know. I mean, it's just human nature, and it's not a white or a black thing. It's just the human mind. You're going to become what you surround yourself with. Well, if that's all that they're surrounded with, then they're probably not going to be able to get that leg up opportunity. So one of my kingdom purposes that God's kind of shown me is, well, so I not just myself, but our family tries to be an ambassador for the community, trying to raise the profile on some of these issues. There's really not an anchor business in that Bryce Hamilton Road area. A lot of retailers, they sign the 20-year lease. As soon as that 20-year lease is up, what do? They go down to the next exit where everybody else is. And then that's, and that's how the urban sprawl works. If you study, how the urban sprawl, just look at the exits on 70. They went from James to Hamilton, Hamilton to Bryce, Bryce to 256, and now they got 10 miles to get out to Etna. Well, you're going to start to see some of that start to come back in, but just like I talked to you about, you're going to receive what you're ready for. The community is going to receive what they're ready for. This is where I get a little bit disgruntled with our politicians and stuff, because they tell the community all of these things that they want to hear, yet I don't see them ready in these communities to bring in. Look at what's happening in New Orleans, and I love it, and I'm very encouraged by it. But look at how much electric. Look at, where's the water coming from? Where's the water coming from? Columbus. So they're piping all this water, all this resource, all the way out there. Why? Because they've got land. Okay. I think that they have a plan. I think that they're pulling the levers and they have a plan. And then I look at Eastland Mall. They've got the electric, they've got the water, they've got the land, they've got the people. But they're not putting it together. And I think it's one of those things that, yes, we can talk to our legislators and all of this stuff, but at the end of the day, I think there needs to be a business community and coming together and trying to solve some of these problems. So our philosophy on this is, we do very well in the community that we're in. And we don't want to be in that community with a hand out. We do want to be in our community with a hand up as a responsibility to help raise the profile on some of these issues. And so we do our own workforce development things inside of Lindsay, but I can't hire every person, you know? And we need to get this synergy of businesses coming in so that we can create those living wage jobs. And that's really a big part of the responsibility that everybody, all of you have in this room, entrepreneur. Yes, do you want to work for yourself? Yes, do you have a good idea? Yes, do you like the autonomy? Yes, yes, yes. And that's the fun part. But there's also this responsibility that says, you know, I need to sew into a younger person and help show them the way so that they can break this cycle out of their life. And it can be done. That's the American story. That's why we've got to protect what we have here, because you go to other countries, they don't have the ability to start a business and be successful like you all do. They just don't. It is a quagmire of just legislative and red tape and expenses and all of these things. I mean, what we can do in this country is great. And I think from that thankfulness and that appreciation, we'll start to know and understand, I've been put in here in this area with these people around me with this idea for a very specific reason. But there's responsibility in that, and the steps of the righteous are ordered of the Lord, and he will guide those steps, and he will bless the work of your hands. That's what the Bible says. But he also says that you got to live in faith, and Jesus is very clear about your level of faith, and how you got to put your faith and trust in him and in his processes, and he will direct your path. So.
That's good. That's good. We're going to talk about T.U.R.N in a minute, and you're kind of leaning into that direction already as to what your family is doing on a local basis on the east side. But getting back to a little bit of business, what's your business's vision, and why is it important for somebody that's starting a business to think about that vision? I mean, to really spend a lot of time on what that vision, what those goals are.
So, you know, I think when you look at having something that you can point to as a compass that's attainable is, so a vision statement is paramount. So, you know, our vision statement is to create a world-class dealership based on servant integrity, servant leadership, benchmark processes, team member development, and community involvement that leads to success and excellence. And so that's kind of so you know what, like most vision statements or mission statements are like these pie in the sky things, right? You know, it's like you read their vision statement, you're like, oh, that sounds great. And then it's like, I don't think I would ever accomplish that in my business. So I would say that as long as your vision statement is real, you don't want to blow smoke at your employees. You don't want to blow smoke at your customers. You want it to be real and obtainable, but you do want it to be a guiding thing. And so, yeah, I mean, integrity is 101, right? Team development is paramount. You know, we've got to help people develop. That's Packer's law. You know, people growth equals business growth. You know, we've got to have solid processes and some leadership and, you know, all of these things. And it's good to keep those at the forefront. I love the traction model. I think that book is so good. I don't know if any of you guys are reading the traction.
It's just an operating system.
Yeah, it's just it's a good place for anybody to start. And you have to be careful you don't get lost in the weeds of, I'm not suggesting he does, but I'm just saying, don't feel like you got to have all that stuff. John Maxwell says that, you know, you can aim, and a lot of people just end up aiming for the rest of their life. They never pull the trigger. They never fire. And, you know, this today is readying And then there's the aiming aspect, which is what you're talking about with the vision statement. But at some point, you just gotta go. And I'm a ready, fire, aim kind of guy, which gets me into trouble sometimes. It does, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs, can. But don't be scared to hit the trigger and then dial it in and manage. But yeah, it's good. And I would say even beyond that, goal setting is very important. And I like the SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-based. I like the SMART goal process. I think that's good. But I think goals, I would argue, are probably more important, honestly. Okay. Because most of them are quantifiable. And cash is king.
How often do you step back personally? And then how often does your team step back and work on you?
Yeah.
Work on the business rather than, it's easy to go show up every day and do what you need to do. How often is a business, how often do you step back and kind of analyze?
Not enough. Not enough. Hardly at all. I work 5.5 days a week, sometimes 6. It's 8 a.m. till 6:30, 7 p.m. a lot of times. That's just what I signed up for. One of the things that we're trying to work on as a family is having dinner together. I mean, it sounds crazy, but that's just kind of the season that I'm in. So when you're neglecting and having things like that, you're not going on a 3-day retreat to go work on yourself. You're just not. How do I do that? Reading that Bible in the mornings. I have a rule that when I'm at home, I'm at home, and when I'm at work, I'm at work, and there's no stops in between. There's no stops in between. It's you go to work, and when you're home, and there's no stops in between. And I think that's good because your focus level is paramount. I think sometimes when you're trying to do this and that, the devil's not going to get me, caught up in a bunch of nonsense sin that would just be, complete and utter foolishness. But he will try to keep me busy and distracted. And so that's where I try to eliminate as many distractions as I possibly can. I haven't had cable TV in my house for at least 10 years. I do not do social media. I do not care what people eat for dinner, and I don't care where they went on vacation, because all it's going to do is make me feel about this big, constantly. Because everybody's just putting all this stuff out there. And no disrespect to it. You guys may be in the social media business. I don't really care. I'm just telling you, for me, I won't watch an R-rated movie. There's just certain things that I have to be. There's certain radio stations I just won't listen to, because I have to protect my level of focus. So those are simple things that prevent me from getting as damaged. Eating healthy, I heard this, I was at somebody I knew had at very distance had passed, and it's like, why did God take him? You think God didn't take him. This guy didn't take care of himself, which is why he died. It's like, it had nothing to do with God. It had everything to do with the decisions that he made. But I think people sometimes want to try to loop that in and think it's like, well, I don't have time to get sick. I don't have time to, so there are things that I can do to take care of myself to prevent that. And I think that's where I don't want to break myself to have to work on myself. How do I read? I do read. That's the other thing I do. So I read, and I'm dumbfounded how many people that I interview. I interview a lot of people, especially younger people. And I ask them, it's like, oh, do you read? And it's like, what are they going to say? No, I don't read. They're in an interview. They're like, so they say, I read. It's like, the next question is like, okay, well, what do you read? And it's like, oh, And it's this the best one. Articles on the internet. And it's like, okay, well, what kind of like, and it's sports articles on the internet. That's what these people read. And I'm thinking to myself, and you're gonna come work for me, somebody who reads, who's bettering themselves, that's constantly different. You're gonna get your lunch eaten, because I'm probably not going to identify with you because I don't read about sports. Buckeyes don't pay my paycheck. And I'm focused on what it is that I'm after. And yet I think a lot of people are taking very valuable brain space. Fantasy novels. I remember when, it's like, I don't know. I mean, like, that's what people are reading. I'm like, dude, you're in sales. Shouldn't you be reading like sales books, goal setting books? So reading for me is another thing that I do just to kind of keep myself aligned. Obviously praying, but I would love to go on a 3-day.
We'll invite you
on me. I know.
We'll invite you on. Yeah, come, that'd be great.
I
Maybe we'll schedule it 2 years in advance.
Right.
Maybe go and get you.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, hey, you've got 3 dealerships now, right? Your dad started with the motor. You don't have anything to do with motorcycles anymore,
No.
do you? Right? I didn't think so. So you got the Honda dealership, that was number 1, then the Acura, then more recently the Buick GMC. What precipitated that growth? Probably more appropriately timeliness-wise. What precipitated going and adding the Buick GMC?
Yeah, it was a proximity thing, right? So, if I'm a Subway owner, I'm probably not going to want to open a Quiznos right next door. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't want to cannibalize your own market. You want to maximize. And so for us, didn't want to cannibalize that Lindsay brand that's very strongly associated with Honda and Acura, or maybe another import that it's kind of like, well, wait a second. Because I mean, we believe strongly in Honda and Acura vehicles. I mean, I think they're the best vehicles in the road. Okay, very partial to them. But the resale value shows that the longevity. I mean, I talk to people regularly that they know how many miles are on their car, and that's just a staple. So I think it represents us well. With the Buick and the GMC, the proximity to us being a domestic brand where it's trucks and maybe not necessarily a customer base that we would have engaged with beforehand, we felt like it was a good match. Plus, it was a door that got opened, and it's been tough. I'll be honest with you. It's because you're all new product, all new executives. You have to start to know all new programs. So it's really been a stretching exercise for me personally. But I mean, it's one of those things that I have confidence in because I know God opened the door. So even though the enemy or situations or whatever aren't necessarily lining up, I just have to trust and believe that I'm in the perfect will of God with that project. So,
Okay, good. What sets you apart? What do you do specifically to make Lindsay different? I mean, obviously you've got, Honda makes cars, Lindsay makes the difference.
Yeah, what is the difference?
What is the difference?
Yeah, I don't know.
Everything that you do.
So it's something that we're working on because we talk about it, we know it's there, but actually trying to verbalize that is hard because it's one of those things that we want to just live. And it's kind of like you don't know the real deal till you meet them, kind of thing. And people can talk and but you know the real deal when you meet the real deal. And I think that's again a calling that we have as Christians. Understanding that customers' perception is reality. Understanding that, yeah, okay, I can certainly see where we didn't think we were wrong, but what did the customer perceive? Because the customer's perception all that matters. Like, I don't care if they're wrong and you think you're right. They think they're right. That's all that matters. That's the business that we're in, is customers' perceptions. That there's two sides to every story. I mean, you wouldn't believe how many times that I've heard an employee give me a whole download on how customer situation is, and then it's like, let's go talk to the customer. You talk to the customer and you hear bits and pieces that kind of left out. That add a lot of color to the whole situation. It's like, so being objective, believe it or not, is a big part of the Lindsay difference. Operating in forgiveness. You know, there's businesses out there that will fire a customer. I am so fundamentally opposed to this thought process of firing a customer. It's like, who do you think you are? And I get it. You know, we all have that one or two that's just out there. But I'm telling you, man, it's everything in me to not want to not do business with somebody. I just think it's a very slippery slope, and you're almost, in some ways, closing the door on certain things. And I think that you have to be sensitive to that. If you have this mindset of firing customers, you might want to have a mindset of why am I thinking that right now? What is it that I'm misunderstanding? And I think if you're a little bit more objective and open-minded to it and more graceful, you probably realize that this passion that this person is having is probably very, very founded. You might want to maybe dig in a little bit and see if there's not something that you can learn from it. So, yeah, I think, you know, we're willing, so not firing a customer, but then we also want to make sure that we're offering the most competitive deals. And that's not just on the price of the car, that's the trade-in value, that's, you know, wanting to build a relationship with that customer. We know and understand that people have to choose to maybe drive a little bit further to do business with us. We want to make that worth it for them, not just in value, but just in how they feel in the relationship, all that stuff. So.
No, that's good. I mean, I know Rob, Jeff, others in this room, we've talked about firing customers. I know I've talked to at least the two of them about that, right? And me, you know, and that's a challenging thing. I want to go a little deeper into that actually. So what do you do to try to work through that? Because sometimes, you know, a lot of people say sometimes, you know, you gotta clip and prune, you know, and you know, pruning relationships that you talked about earlier, but maybe not pruning that
I want them all.
I get you.
I
get you.
Even the idiot customer that, I know it sounds crazy, but I just think it's so, think about how hard you work to get a customer.
Yeah, there you
To
go.
get that first one. And now you're in a situation where you're willing to fire or prune. I just, you know, I want them all. And I don't know that you're going to
I'm with
achieve
you.
growth. I mean, yeah, sure, from a pruning, you know, are you making more room for others? Yeah, hopefully. But why not just capture them all? You know, I mean, even the scripture is like, when you think about when Jesus fed the 5,000, awesome miracle. Okay, but what's so cool about that whole thing is he commanded the disciples to do what? Yeah, what did he command them to do? Gather the fragments. To gather the fragments. How many basketfuls were there? Fragments. There's 12 basketfuls of fragments. There's often more in the fragments, and some of those fragments could be these pruned customers.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I just think it's one of those things that it's like, if you have a one basketful type mentality, that's what you're going to receive. You know, but the Jesus, the kingdom, okay, is overflow so much that you can't contain it. You know, it's the nets that are breaking. It's the 12 basketful. That's the kingdom, guys. That's the Jesus that we all serve. And so if it's, well, I don't want this one because it's dented, this bread because it's dented, and I want to toss it. No, Jesus said collect the fragments. And I think that's where I think some of my mindset comes from.
That's good. That's good. You've obviously, you know, you're leading your businesses, and you've launched other ones, and you told us about the insurance. Okay, told us a little bit about the insurance. Were those, and the one you said was your idea. That was a dream. It was speaking. It was 5 o'clock in the morning. I've had those too, right? And with all of your responsibility, first tell us about this Ceramiseal. Tell us a little bit more about the insurance, how those relate to what you're doing now, because they do directly relate. And how do you handle all the responsibilities you have?
Okay.
But then you're adding these
So,
things.
so in our business, I don't want to be sensitive to your time.
Oh, we're good. We're good.
Yeah. So, in my business, right, you know, it's predominantly car sales, right? So people think, well, how would you make money on a car? You buy it for 10 and you sell it for 12. You make $2,000, and then that's your gross profit. Then you have your costs out of that, and that's how you make it. But when you think about how much money is involved in a car, right? It's not just the car, right? It's the car, the tires that are on the car that are going to wear out 36,000 miles. It's the brake pads that are going to wear out okay, so you have the whole service aspect of it, and then you have the whole parts. Okay, so now you've got two other lanes beyond just the car. So now we've got three. Then you've got the financing aspect of it, right? Because you're going to need to get a loan typically, right? Most people get a loan on a car. And then you have extended service contracts, like maybe called extended warranty, that you want to take, you want to share that risk with somebody else because you're planning on keeping this car for a long time. So we'll sell those products. And then, so those are kind of the things that most dealerships are involved in. Okay. Beyond that is other layers. And I touched on the feeding the 5,000. This is another thing that the Lord showed me was, and I touched on it, but there's often more in the fragments than there is a seed. Think about when you go to the grocery store, what happens, right? You got the checkout line, and then it's the gum and the candy and all that stuff right there. And, you know, I mean, they used to be a pack of gum was, I don't know, 50 cents, and now a pack of gum's like $3.69 or $4.69, $5.69 for a pack of gum. Why is it so much more expensive? Well, because you're just going to go, you're not going to shop. It's a convenience thing, but it's that fragment right there. TJ Maxx, right? Anybody shop at TJ Maxx? They put in a fragment lane, right? So now you got to walk down all the iPhone cables and candy and all this stuff that they never sold before, but it's all there. Why? This fragment is very valuable, high margin. And so, you know, I think in your all's business, right, in your business, you got to be sensitive to what these fragments are, because there's often more in the fragment than there is. So some of the fragment businesses that we've got into is the insurance. Got very distinctive call me to that. What I like about the insurance business that we've gotten into is it's a way that we can help our customers save money by a necessary item. So we identify that insurance is something that everybody's going to have to buy to get a car. What we saw was that people didn't know how to effectively shop for insurance. They like, how do you shop for insurance? Like, what would you do? Like, do you call your agent? Do you call something you saw from a funny commercial? Do you hop online? But everybody kind of has their own way of doing it, and it's not really ever any consistent. And I don't think anybody really knows because they're never going to take the time to really shop around. Maybe more people in this room, but like in general, people just are not good because there's so many variables too. Is it bundled? You know, what's my deductible? So we created an agency called Compare Quote, which is basically we do the shopping, you get the savings. So the whole model and our whole mission on that is we treat insurance like it's a commodity. These are all A-rated carriers, but the whole goal is to leverage the independent insurance agency model that just sees if your profile aligns with certain carriers better. And then, I mean, it's often that we'll save somebody $50. If we don't save them $50 a month, then they probably don't switch. But I mean, it's often $100, $120, $150 a month people are saving by utilizing the service. So, you know, it's just kind of a cool thing. It's a fragment business. We've created some paint protections, some interior protections that are very important to our customers, especially the ones that are buying new cars. They want that vehicle to remain. So it's the ceramics coatings business, which is kind of come on. And then I'm actually, along with that, I've gotten into the software business, which is a software that I sell to car dealerships around the country for them to emulate certain processes that we've been able to do inside of our business. So it used to be when you buy a car, they'd show you how to cruise control and how the power windows work and how you set the radios stations on your radio player. Now it's like, Do you want your car to take over driving for you? And at what distance do you want the car to apply the brakes? And, here's your XM stations, let's program your FM stations. Here's the app that connects to your car. Here's how it works. Here's accessories that you want to look at. Here's your first service appointment. Oh, by the way, we have a body shop. It's on and on and on and on. And the customer's like exhausted. Or the salesperson's exhausted. And the person hasn't even gotten in their car yet. So we created a workflow that basically streamlines that whole process digitally so that the customer can now get all the information and relevant things that they need done prior to them leaving the dealership. And you're doing that not through the staff that has to be trained and at their discretion of what they'll present. It's now being done through our system. So just some cool stuff. But again, we're called to be the head and not the tail. We're called to be above and not beneath, right? Deuteronomy 28:13, right? We're called to be, okay, well then we should be. You know what I'm saying? It's like we should be creating things like this. We should be taking turn. Why is it that we see all of these things influencing our culture that don't align with godly principles? And I think it's fundamentally part of it is we don't know the rules of engagement. We don't know how to play the game. That's why you guys are in here. You're learning how to play the game of tennis. You're learning how to play the game of basketball. You're learning how to play the game of entrepreneurship. And that's great, but don't be an armchair quarterback. Don't be just, here for entertainment reasons. Be here because you're called to this and you're called to be the best. And you understand scripturally what it is that you have a responsibility for. Because to whom much is given, right, much is required. And so because you are giving this information, you're giving people that have a ministry heart for you to succeed. You've got to hold that with regard, not just in the respect, but the respect in your actions. And so faith without works, faith without doing something is dead. And so take the time to really exercise and put yourself forward and watch how that favor opens doors for you. Watch how that customer leans in on you. Watch how doors just continue to get open. And then, of course, right, give God the glory because he's the maker of heaven and earth and why we're all here.
You're a multi-generational family. You're the second generation in that. For those of you that maybe have family businesses or you're thinking about even your kids, or you are a second generation already, how you handle that? What have maybe been some of those struggles and how do you overcome that? I mean, you got to respect mom and dad, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And your siblings. So how are some of the struggles that you?
So again, going back to scripture, and not to air dirty laundry, not that we have any, but I mean, when you're in family business, it's tough. I mean, when you're working with a spouse or you're working with, siblings or you're working with, there's just things. Understanding honor and authority is just as much for me in personal development and me in growth as it is to respect my father. I'm not going to agree with a good amount of things that he is going to say or whatever. It doesn't mean that we're going to just adhere to everything, but there is a level of honor that you have to, beyond honoring your father and mother. I'm talking honoring authority, understanding authority. And, for whatever reason, God had me under a place of authority for probably much longer than, maybe I think I would certainly want to in my own flesh. But, you just got to bend a knee to that and die to your own pride and do your own thing and learn from that. And believe you me, it'll take you 20 years to figure that out. Yes, this isn't something you just, okay, I got it. Now I honor. It's like living that out is a whole nother level. And I think that that's where, in the confines of a family business or spouses working together or whatever, you got to understand the chain of command. It's just like flying an airplane, right? There's two pilots up there, but if they don't communicate who pilot in command is, next thing you know, they're going to come down. It's like, oh, I thought you had it. No, I thought you had it. I thought you had it. It's like, oh. So there's clear communication on who's in command or who's in, and understanding that, but then just understanding that that pilot that's in the left seat, he's the default too, and respecting that. And I think that's the same thing inside of a family business, you know, respecting the decisions that my dad made 50 years ago. I'm not gonna live there, but I need to respect that. I need to honor that. But I need to honor the same decisions that our forefathers in this country made. I need to honor the legislators and people that I maybe don't necessarily agree with. And I don't want to rag on certain politicians. I don't want to get stuck there because I understand they are placed in authority. Right. And you have to honor the office and you have to honor, and God will honor that and he will bless that. And so just, I think that's been an effective way for me personally.
That's great. Well, let's circle back then. You mentioned this a little earlier, T.U.R.N, the Ultimate Resource Network. And we had our very first Noble Academy with T.U.R.N. So Noble launched, and we've now had 4 since then. And we just planted one in Pittsburgh, and now Pittsburgh. We've got some of you on from Pittsburgh. Wave, there you go. So we've got a class now that's just graduated from Pittsburgh also, and that's launching Noble in Pittsburgh. But T.U.R.N's a wonderful organization, and I think your sister is kind of the lead on that. So that's fantastic. You got a family member. That's kind of leading in your family in that area. But tell us about T.U.R.N, what it's doing. I know that part of T.U.R.N is your dad and others. You want to see T.U.R.N replicated, not just serving. You guys serve the east side, but you want to help maybe even other areas create T.U.R.N. And maybe somebody in here might want to know more about that. So tell us about T.U.R.N.
Yeah. So T.U.R.N is basically a think tank, or think of it as a think tank for nonprofits in our area. So it's not even a chartered nonprofit. It's nothing more than a vehicle for nonprofits to kind of plug into, connect on, and then network. So I think in our so the area that we kind of serve with this is the Bryce Road / Hamilton Road South areas, and then all of the areas around that in between. I think there's like 150 churches in that block. There's like 85 nonprofits. You know, and the business guy in my father. So actually, this is a prophetic thing. My dad was called to this, and so. You know, now the business guy in him is like, we're not going to start another nonprofit. Like fundamentally, what we don't need is another nonprofit. What we need is to get the nonprofits to do something.
Yeah, work good.
We need to get the churches, and people don't want to hear this. Like, okay, so poverty is still a problem. There's 150 churches in the area. I mean, literally, go back, drive around, you'll see church. I mean, think about it. There's churches everywhere. And then it's, well, okay, but let's talk about the nonprofit. Well, there's a nonprofit for literally everything. And yet they're not winning. And it bothers him, bothers me, bothers any business person. And one of the things that you'll find is people love getting into meetings and they love talking about things. But like, do they even do anything? I mean, you know, these are like, because if they were doing stuff, you would see, you know, you would certainly see a lot. So creating, so part of that think tank or that network, now there starts to be a little more accountability from that. And it's been awesome to see how the 150 churches has kind of boiled down to like 10. Like there's 10 real that want to get after it. There's 10 or 15 real nonprofits that want to get after it now when those guys can start to align and go after things. One of my favorite things that we do as a group there is so this is led by my sister, predominantly. One of the tools comes out of Tony Evans' church in Dallas area or Texas. That's where but they leverage other churches that are already in the community to reach the schools. So there's the school church, well, you know all about it, right? There's a school church connection, right? Where a church adopts a school. And like, what a great idea. Okay, so where T.U.R.N comes in, so we will basically make grants to these churches to be able to do, like, support whatever initiative it is. So great one was, I think it was East High. Well-funded on football, well-funded on basketball, but the baseball team literally had like one batting helmet.
Oh.
And like, one. And like, I don't think they had uniforms. I mean, it was like straight out something you'd probably see in a movie. And here this church, not T.U.R.N, this church shows up with about $1,500 worth of brand new baseball gear that matches their school colors. Wow. Now you're leveraging money through the church that's already there to reach these school kids and their families.
Yeah.
And you don't think those kids don't have their head up high? And who made that happen? This church. Now all of a sudden they've got to be a voice to be able to. So leveraging the resources that are already in place, which is churches. I mean, they're what's a tremendous thing. So if you're thinking about doing some kind of a term, you leverage your churches and you leverage your existing nonprofits, and then you kind of set some parameters, and you quickly find out who the real players are, and it's just awesome. But that's just one example. I mean, countless of those, and it's all through this Tony Evans program where the church adopts the school, and these schools are wide open. They are wide open to receive from these churches to be able to minister to the staff. One of the other churches didn't do anything for the kids; they ministered to the staff. Bought them all gift certificates to, I don't know where it's Starbucks or Panera or something. Brought Panera in, just wanted to minister to them, just bless them for all their hard work. I mean, like, again, so much of the narrative as Christians that we have, I wouldn't even say necessarily Christians, just people that start to become maybe even judgmental. It's like the media is only going to confirm a lot of what we already think. And it's like, man, get out of your little tiny world and start to visit some of these schools, start to talk to the staff. You know, the media is going to tell you, oh, City of Columbus schools, you know, they spend more per student than anybody else in Ohio. You know, it's like, yeah, they're not doing a good job. And did you see what happened to the superintendent? Blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, but what is still happening? What is still happening? We're still not accomplishing the goal. So maybe in their ways, do we just give up on the schools? Do we just give up on the kids because of that? No, I don't think that's the right answer. But I think being smart about it, being shrewd about it, and then leaning into existing networks and now starting to put the challenge out to those that are in the community that are supposed to already be doing this and challenging them and then supporting them with, you know, monies. Now all of a sudden, boom, you're able to address some real issues. So stuff like that, events, creating events to just bring the community together, and praying for the community, praying, you know, these strongholds down, these spirits of poverty, they're real, guys. Like, poverty is a spirit. I mean, people think that it's just, no, man, it's a spirit, and there's things that come with that. And I drive by it every day. I drive by the drug use, the alcoholism, just the fornication, and I see it. It's all around me, and it's poverty that that you see in the flesh. I can only imagine what's happening in the spiritual realm, and again, that's where getting the churches together, praying against the stuff, praying against these spirits of poverty, understanding that we can take dominion over the enemy in darkness. You can take dominion over your finances. Tithing is the best thing that you can do for your business. You know, I mean, sowing into the kingdom, sowing into your church, giving. You'll hear worldly talk about the importance of giving and being generous. They'll tell you it works. You know, it's a principle. Well, guess where else it works? The Bible talks all about that stuff. So understanding some of these things to combat that and how God will use that in your business is key.
Well, congratulations and thank you for what you're doing on this. Good turn for sure. One last question from me, and then we're going to open it up for questions from all of you. So think about any questions you want to submit online, as well as here in the audience, and we'll have close to 20 minutes to answer any questions that you all may have. But one last question, Steve, for the young entrepreneurs in here, what's your advice? What kind of advice would you give to even maybe the seasoned entrepreneur as well? But we've got to get a lot of younger businesses.
Yeah.
Here.
So
what
if you're younger, I would tell you to get a job and to go to that job with the mindset of learning from it. I mean, like, I'll just use the example of McDonald's, right? So McDonald's is basically run by a bunch of 14 to 20-year-olds. I mean, it really is impressive. And, I don't know how you feel. I like McDonald's personally. It's great. I think McDonald's is great. I don't eat it every day, but I sneak in there probably a couple times a month. And it's always a good experience. It's a good experience. I mean, I'm not expecting a world-class experience, but it's always a good experience. And it's the same story, whatever McDonald's I go to. Why do I say that? Because what you're going to learn is billions and billions of dollars of information that's right there in front of you. And if you look at it as just a job, and it's like, well, I don't know. But if you understand that you can study, one of my favorite books is Art of War by Sun Tzu. Never read it. You should definitely read that book. Talks about the elements of spies and how important spies are. You can be a spy for your own business by learning. So if you want to get into, I don't know, computer programming, or if you want to get into owning your own restaurant or real estate or whatever, don't discount where you're at today and how much you can learn by simply looking at it through the lens of that's why they do that, or that's genius, or whatever, because you can learn a ton from that. So young entrepreneurs, I told you this earlier, you got to read, get out of your comfort zone. I mean, you're not going to be an entrepreneur, if you think it's, whipping out, dollar bills and, whatever, everything else the world will tell you entrepreneurship's like, it sucks. It's tough. I don't say that lightly. Like, there are countless situations I can think of that it's like, if I knew that going into it, I probably would have done it. Still glad I'm on the other side of it, but you got to be mentally prepared that, you're going to have very, very, very difficult circumstances to have to overcome. That's the beautiful thing of being an entrepreneur, though. You figure out problems nobody else can. You realize that, right? You're figuring out how to sell that house that nobody else could. You're figuring out how to deal with that buyer that nobody else could. You're figuring out how to fix this problem in the schools that nobody else could. I don't know what it is. You're a problem solver. So if you don't like problems, or you don't do well with problems, you probably shouldn't be learning how to be an entrepreneur. You got to understand, like, it's just going to be crappy trying to deal with some of these problems. Optimism, I would not say optimism would be one of the things that I would say. I think you're all optimistic. I think you probably already got that. That's why you're sitting in here. So I wouldn't say you got to be an optimistic person. You got to protect that. I think you got to be mindful of being optimistic, but I don't think that's something you've got to have. I think tenacity and strength are probably way more important um, because you have you guys read Good to Great? Has anybody ever read Good to Great? The Stockdale paradox. Do you guys remember what the Stockdale paradox was? James Stockdale was they were POWs in Vietnam, and James Stockdale was he got out, and basically all of his comrades didn't. And he said the question was who were the first to go. And it was the optimists were the first to go because they were going to get out by Christmas. Christmas came, and then they were going to get out by Easter, and Easter came, and then they were going to get out by, and their hope was in this thing. But the Stockdale paradox is this resolve that you're going to accomplish your goal. You're going to figure this out. It's just that resolve that's beyond optimism, and they call it the Stockdale paradox. But I think just having that strength, I think also not celebrating too early. It's easy in this country to have that big deal go through, and then you buy that fancy car, that fancy watch, and you've arrived. It's like the minute you think you've arrived, you're done. And it's a slippery slope. Don't you first of all, there's always somebody better. There's always somebody smarter. There's always something else to do. And so just understanding that it's not how much money you make, it's how you spend it. Being very sensitive to one of Ben Franklin's quotes, which is small leaks sink big ships. You know, like if you think you're going to sign up for this program and that's over here, and then you're going to do this over here, next thing you know, you get all these little leaks, and there's whole industries built around supporting you guys. By the way, there's whole industries built around, just sign up for this program, do this coaching lesson, your answer's over here, blah blah blah, and then you're just spending your money away on all these small leaks. Really not that hard. You know what to do. You're surrounding yourself with good people. But you got to realize that you're not probably going to get a coach or a mentor who's going to walk you through this process. I mean, these guys are going to be helpful and do the one-on-ones and stuff, but don't think that you're not successful because you never had that mentor. They're not out there, guys. I'm sorry. There's nobody who walked in your exact shoes that's going to be able to tell you exactly what to do. Again, you're an entrepreneur. Can you get encouragement? Can somebody help point you in the right direction? Yes. But nobody's going to say what you need to do is this. And you know what? I would question if they do. They may not be telling you the right answer. They may be unintentionally leading you on a wild goose chase. And I've been through all that, especially for the younger people. I mean, it's easy for me to young man, what you need to do. What's the Bible say? You know a tree by its fruit. And I'd be very careful taking advice from people that don't have any fruit. And and they're full of, trust me, I've seen it. But I think that knowing and understand, leaning on God, praying to God, asking Him for wisdom. The Bible says that if you ask for wisdom, that He'll give it to you liberally, right? Okay, that's what the Bible says. We trust or not. So Lord, I need wisdom and what to do with this customer, or how do I get my foot into the door with this, or whatever. And God will give it to you liberally. I've seen it over and over. And He wants you to win. He wants you to be successful. He put these desires in your heart, and you've got to have the humility and the grace to be able to operate through that. What you'll get. So.
Good, Steve. Thank you so much for sharing. We've got some time for the questions. Let's go to our online folks here.
We have three questions online. Jim had the first one. Do you want to unmute and ask it out loud, or do you want me to read it?
Oh, that's fine. I just was curious. Thanks, Steve. What if you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice? Where would you go, and what would you get? What advice would you give yourself?
I didn't hear it. I don't know.
He said, if you had one piece of advice to give, where would you go and what would you give? I think a lot of what I shared with you today is some of that, right? I can tell you, I think giving yourself a little bit more margin sometimes is something any good entrepreneur can be sensitive to. I think the play of an entrepreneur sometimes is more, you know, opportunity, and knowing when to say no so that you have capacity to say yes to the right things. I think that's one of the things that I could look back on and say, I missed this opportunity, this deal, because I chased that one. And you know, you don't want to live with regret. There's always going to be another opportunity, but I think having capacity to learn how to say no, and maturity when to say no, knowing that it may not be God's best or what the best thing is.
Thank you, Jim, on that one. Next one up there.
Roderick Bodel had the next one.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, my question was actually I had two, if that's okay. Do you always plan to stay in the day-to-day of the business, or do you ever plan to step back at all? How would that look like if so, and maybe not at all, but just wondering.
You know, I enjoy it. So you either own your business or your business owns you. You know, I think for me to expand beyond where we're at today, it's going to require me to be able to get out of the day-to-day of the existing businesses. And until God calls me to that, unless the Lord builds this house, they labor in vain. I just, you know, God would have to clearly show me that that's what it is. Your pride wants to tell you to expand and more. And that's just not materialized. It's been a desire. I can tell you that, but it's just not come together. And so, you know, as those doors would open and things would progress, then yeah, but that would only be to expand the business even beyond or into other areas of the business, the fragment stuff that I wasn't about. But yeah, good question. What's the next one?
Yeah, it's about the spirit of poverty mindset. How do you recommend to someone to kind of take your advice or listen to you about taking the next step to come out of that spirit of poverty mindset? Seems like their first response is always, you know, I don't have the money, obviously. So how do you get someone to take your advice on getting out of that mindset?
Well, you know, I've never lived in poverty, so I would not probably be the one to be able to address it. But I will tell you, I think if you understand there's a spiritual aspect of it, I think that's what I was trying to highlight. There's definitely a spiritual aspect to it. And I think if you understand that it's not necessarily something that can be solved. I mean, we have so many government programs and things that are trying to deal with poverty, and it's just getting worse. I mean, it's just getting worse. I mean, the divide's just getting more and more and more. And that's what's happening. So, you know, it depends on how they would define poverty, but I will say that it's like the lady that had the 2 pence she was trying, and the Pharisees were kind of like, you know, blowing her off or shoving her to the side because she didn't have any money. And Jesus says, no, she's giving more than anybody. I think that understanding that you don't have a lot of money, but what you do have, I think we need to give. And I think sometimes what happens with, you know, my parents both come from areas in Ohio that are very poverty stricken. So I've been around enough of it just through, you know, family and in the area. And then of course, you know, I see it in a lot going on in our area where our business is. But I think if you understand that it is better to give than to receive, and that there's blessing in that, and to avoid the victim aspect of things, you know, there's always a reason why There's always a health issue. Why? There's always, somebody did. And I mean, after a while, you're never going to come out of that with a fixed-minded thinking where your belief is, why try? Why even try, or why we're the growth-minded person? And again, it's hard for us, and this is a principle. There's a whole book written, it's called Mindset by Carol Dweck. But it's people either operate with a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. And we're growth-minded people. That's why you guys are in this room. So it's hard for you to identify with this but there are areas where we are fixed-minded. I've been fixed-minded with my kids, or fixed-minded with certain people that I engage with. But I think at a higher level, when you really understand the belief system of somebody who's fixed-minded versus somebody who's growth-minded, and you understand that those align with fixed-mindedness aligns with poverty and victimhood. It's a good way to come out of that is to start to ask yourself very different questions, and that's basically what this book starts to talk about, and that's how I've understood. And again, I don't my victim stuff that I'm struggling through, whatever, is not, maybe poverty. It's, why does this always happen when I try to do this, or, whatever. And so it's just asking questions like, what do I want? Now what do I want out of this situation? What do I want out of, and starting to align with how you get there. And so, it's hard for me to address that, but I will say that fixed versus growth mindset is paramount in that, but also in just all of our own lives.
That's good. One last question from our online audience. Steve, and turn on your mic.
Yeah, I'm muted, but Jim,
Oh.
or Jim has the next question. Or did Steve have a question too? He didn't put it in the chat.
Steve has a question. Go ahead,
Okay,
Steve.
let's-
Yeah, I was just curious you were talking earlier about, I'm curious about the service department, and you were talking about all the technology and everything that's in the new cars versus an old 427 that we used to work on as kids. How hard is it to man the service department these days? And are there people taking care of doing the training for that?
Yeah, so I'll answer this quickly because it's pretty easy. The cars are actually easier to work on nowadays. The 427s, the carburetors, there was a lot more art. These guys had their tricks, they knew what to do. Now it's all computer generated, and a lot of it's reliant on the manufacturers and exactly what they have for specs for servicing these vehicles. The hard part is getting technicians that actually the younger people that want to get into this arena, right? So a lot of younger people, they wanted to get the professional job, and what you're finding is the professional jobs aren't paying like what the skilled jobs are, right? So HVAC technician, a vehicle mechanic, contractors, plumbers, I mean, they have the opportunity to make a lot of money, because that's what the shortage of jobs is. And so part of our workforce development, Steve, is to help open people's eyes up to these kinds of opportunities. And again, I mean, I touched on it earlier, but you're not going to have business growth if you don't have people growth. Well, people growth is not just headcount, it's mindset and skill count. And so part of your success plan, right, for you to grow has got to be, how am I going to take an unskilled person and teach them this business? And there's plenty of technologies that are out there. When you think about plumbing, plumbing has gone from, you used to have to get copper pipe and do all that stuff, to now, I mean, PEX is you pull it off a roll, you crimp it, and you put it. I know I'm really simplifying this, but my point is those technologies can help streamline and make the training aspect and actually getting the job done better. But it's that growth mindset that we have to apply to be able to actually see that. If you walk around, I can't find anybody, my business would grow if I could just find 3 people. It's like, I'm gonna tell you, your problem is you. Because they're out there, you just have to dig to find them, and you'll find them, and then you'll lose one, and then you'll find another one, but you'll find them. And that's where that growth mindset comes in.
Or you find somebody like Sherry that'll help you find it, because that's what she does. So there you go. So thank you to our virtual audience for those great questions. This side, who has a question? Yes.
You mentioned about how you just went into the GMC Buick and with Honda, you're helping everything on the customer side. Have you had any ability to actually make a difference going up? Have you been able to show a Lindsay difference with Honda Acura and for other dealerships? Obviously, you said that you had the technology or the workflow that you were doing.
Yeah.
How about like on a dealership? How about sharing, gospel principles? Have you had anything like that?
Well, so gospel principles are very good for business. Like, they just are. And, I mean, you look at some of the most successful businesses that are out there. I mean, they're very generous businesses. They're not, they actually happen to be almost anti-gospel when you look at some of how they operate on some fronts. But, oh yeah, I mean, those principles have helped. I mean, our Acura store is the #1 luxury store in the state of Ohio. And if I showed you the store, like the actual physical store, we're getting ready to do another one, so it'll be cool. But like the actual store, it's like, it's not bad. It's just, it doesn't represent who we really are. You think about, wow, I mean, you're telling me of Cleveland and Cincinnati and nobody else sells. Yeah. Our Honda store is one of the top in the country. So yes, those principles are good for business. And again, I think it aligns with whatever business that you guys are all into, right? And it's not gonna, I mean, we're 50 years of this. And I think that's part of what I really appreciate the foundation that I've been given too much to give much required. The foundation was laid initially with my father. I've been able to take it to that next level and instilling a lot of these things that I've shared with you here today. But I do believe that we're called to be that. And so, we've seen great success in the Honda and Acura store. Have not seen that in the GMC store. And so it's been a grind just trying to understand what are these things that we're missing? That's just being a student of the game, being objective, trying to learn and just dig in. Yeah, time will tell on that. But yeah, I mean, it's a great question because, and I think the bigger question is like, okay, great, you seem to say, show me your fruit. What's the reality of where you're living at? Because if there's no fruit here or we're not seeing success, then, they're just good ideas that may or may not help you. And the world's full of consultants. We call them paid spectators. It's easy for me to come into your business and tell you all the things you should do and then walk away and, let you figure it out. It's another thing to be on the ground. And that's why I say, your mentor's not going to show up. I mean, you may get really lucky, but don't think that you're not successful because somebody didn't mentor you. It's like you're an entrepreneur. You've got to figure it out. If you wanted a mentor, go get a union contracting job, and they'll have plenty of people that will help you learn these trades or whatever. You're an entrepreneur. You're figuring things out. And there's no really right answer, and there's nobody that's been down this road before. So,
Well, Steve, we've run out of time, and we just thank you so much for today and your wisdom. Do we get some wisdom today? Oh, yeah. I know I can take 6 or 7. I hope we record it for sure. The
Yes.
record button went, because if this is one I'm definitely gonna get back and review. But Steve, I just want to say you'll be in my continued prayers for the success of your business, and if we'd all just say a prayer for Steve and his business moving forward, because there again, we need more examples like Steve's family, right? That goes out there and just does things the right way in starting, because that's all examples to us, and just this wisdom, we've got to have that. And maybe someday we'll have your dad Bert come and share with us too.
I'll give you some wisdom.
Yeah. Different one there. But But Steve, it's been great. And thank you to all of you for doing, and thank you to everybody on the virtual audience today for joining us today. And just God bless everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. And again, Noble is here to help you on a one-on-one basis. So we do have a sign-in sheet or sign-up sheet in the back if anybody wants some one-on-one. And there's a number of people in here who've already had that. Okay. And we're just keeping that growing, and we're excited for what we're doing. And just those of you who know kind of Noble, unfortunately, our next step with Noble Academy in New Jersey has been delayed a little bit. Their church got flooded. And so we've got a little bit of delay from going to Pittsburgh right to New Jersey to grow another Noble location, but we're working on that. But God's opened the door. It looks like we might be going to Cleveland now as another place to get Noble going. We've got a pastor up there that really wants us to go. So sometimes God kind of shifts one and opens another. We'll be at New Jersey, maybe in the next couple of months, but it's been delayed. And there again, that was the Lord's plan and how things work out. But thank you so much for being here. God bless you all, and have a wonderful weekend.
We do want to take a big group shot real quick.
Yeah,
If everybody
let's do
can walk up front,
Big
let
group shot
Martin
up
take
front.
his picture. We'll all be good to go.
Of your